This is Anthony Johnson. I'm here with Jason Harrison, and we're from Delve Risk, and we're going to be talking about planning for the future. It's a huge piece, right? We won't get into our backgrounds. I'm sure we've covered that in some other video thing. It's January 2026, and I think this is a good time. Like we talked about this being a good time to talk about planning for the future. You've led huge sales teams and done some really cool stuff in this space. What does planning for the future mean for a seller in cybersecurity?
It's a lot of different things, right? Like right now, most of the sales leadership has been doing some planning, and now they're trying to execute on that plan. And what does that look like? It's meeting with their managers and the other leadership in order to talk about what they're going to go sell, how they're going to go sell it, and how much of it they got to go sell. That planning has to come down to personnel and conversations in order to essentially make sure that the financial alignment aligns with the message and the product alignment, that they can actually reach their targets. It's a lot of moving parts and a bit of plate juggling, I would say, in sometimes in instances.
Okay. So I'm not I've been a CISO and not sat on this side for so long, but how do you tactically do that? So I imagine I'm a seller. I've got $1 million quota I got to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean I just need $1 million in pipe? Like, how do I back that in?
Yeah. I mean, that would be great. Yeah. You'd be a hell of a seller if you only need $1 million worth of pipe to hit $1 million number, right? Generally, most people use 4 to 5 times pipeline to what their target number is. But really, it comes down to what your average selling price is. The company might sell at a certain level, but there's different capabilities for different sellers. You got to be honest with your conversation when you're looking at this and understand, like, can I maximize the amount of value for my customer base? And that will also help you understand the number of conversations and companies you got to have and speak with, because there's only a finite amount of business out there. And if you've been assigned a territory, you're going to have anywhere between 1 to 3 accounts if you're strategic, a dozen or so if you're a major enterprise rep. And then if you're into general territory, it could be hundreds or 30 plus. So where do you start? I think that's the biggest question most of them ask.
Okay, so let's play this out a little bit. I've got $1 million pipe or quota, right? The average deal size for the company is about $100,000.
Right.
So theoretically, if I close 10 deals, I've hit my quota for the year.
Exactly.
How many deals? Like, it's January. I'm planning for the future.
Right.
Like, is that I got to have 40 leads that I'm sending 40 messages out? I'm sending is that 40 meetings? Like, how do I kind of think about this if I'm, I've got this patch, or I've got this bucket to hit? Like, how should I think about it?
Yeah,
like practically.
Great questions. So if I'm a seller and I have a product, first I look at my account base, figure out who I've sold to in the past, what numbers can I count on, and then also looking for the white space. So where can I take this product in that it doesn't exist today? And from there, that's where I'd probably start my basis of, like, here's the most opportunity, but yet it's cold. You got to start outreach immediately. Because this is going to take time. You can't guarantee it's going to happen overnight. It might happen late in the year, but you got to start immediately of that outreach. And while we get going and it starts to churn along, you're going to get busier and busier because you're going to build opportunities. You're going to understand where it's going, and then it will start to drive how many conversations, how active you got to be in prospecting in order to continue to build that pipeline funnel in order to hit your targets. And
it also comes down to the sales cycle too, right? So like, if the average sales cycle takes 90 days, I got to hit $1 million by December of end of 2026. Like any conversation that's closing by the end of December, I need to have started in September, right?
You're right. You're exactly right. And even then it might be too late, because when you get into end of year timing, Most people start wrapping books by, mid-December. Decisions are made probably by the end of November, so it's even earlier than that.
So August. So if I'm thinking planning here, I should be hitting January with as many, hey, I exist, how are you doing type of conversations, knowing there's going to be this matriculated funnel all the way through. And if I'm not having conversations by end of August,
Q4 is probably going to happen. Plan for next year with it, right? If you don't have a good line of sight on how you're going to hit your number at the half year, then it's going to be a struggle because you got 4 months roughly left of actual selling that you're going to be out there and be able to connect with your buyers. And then it's all about trying to drive things through purchasing and legal at the end of the year, which you're competing with everybody else.
Because I saw some posts and some articles the other day that mentioned that, like, in cybersecurity and IT, I think more broadly, like only 44% of enterprise sellers hit their quota last year, and it's like it's below 50%, right? So is that generally because it's not enough legwork being done in the January-February timeframe to kind of account for it, you think? Or is it just a super tough environment? Like,
that's really rough, because if you only have 44% of people hitting their numbers, this is why I kind of call into question some of the numbers at times.
It's a great question.
And you gotta look at the macro aspects of what the larger economy is going and what it's doing, right? I mean, you consistently see Microsoft Security, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, these very massive organizations continuously hitting their growth targets. And they have a majority of the sellers out there. So if people are missing their number, it's probably from indecision, especially as AI is being adopted or something else in the market that's causing this problem. On average, most sales leaders can expect about 70% of their teams to actually hit numbers. So that seems a bit low to me in general. But, it's possible because there's so much new AI business. And it's such a new adoption cycle that might be driving some of those numbers lower.
Okay, so let's imagine you're my sales leader, right? I work for you, and I'm on your sales team. You've given me $1 million quota. It feels like if I came to you and said, "Here's how I'm going to hit $1 million. I'm going to create, 10 million in pipe. I'm going to start January. Here's where it needs to be at," and I kind of give you this high level plan. But if the plan shows up and it comes back and I'm like, it's actually going to be $800,000 is what I think is realistic. Is that an actual conversation I can have with my sales leader, or is that more of a, hey, Anthony, go figure out where the other 200K is coming from?
Yeah, it's usually the latter. This is where the top down, bottoms up numbers come. Whenever you actually go into thinking and planning as a sales leader, you get two ways of what you look at numbers at. Top down is from management pushing it down, saying, hey, we got to grow by 40% next year. We did 10 million last year. We need you to do a 14 million this year. Go figure it out. Do you need more people, more marketing? What is it? And the sales leaders have to figure out the plan of how they're going to achieve this growth. And then when they push it down, they generally are thinking that when they push a quota down to their sellers, they're roughly looking at about a 30% loss rate across the board. So even though the number the company has given me is 14 million, the quota I have to assign as a sales leader is actually higher than that in order to cover that 70% gap. So if I only am going to close 30% of my or 70% of my quota, then that quota
I've actually got to go to the team with $18 million. This is what we're trying to do.
Right.
Because sometimes those, I'm not venture backed, right? We're not venture backed at Delve Risk, but it feels kind of arbitrary sometimes. They're like, hey, we did this year. Next year, we promised the investors we're going to do this. You sellers are going to go figure this out.
That's right.
So is it like it feels like a tough nut to crack of like, okay, it's January. How do I plan? I literally have to, because if I come out storming with a plan and have a conversation with you, that feels more defensible. I'm like, oh, actually, I think I can do 1.4. But if I come back, I'm like, you shrunk my territory. You gave me less. That, like,
yeah. So as a sales leader, you always got to kind of weigh these things, right? As you assign revenue, but you also got to allow it to be attainable, or you're going to push out your sellers. In general, you know, everybody has to continue to also grow just as the business is growing. We all have bigger goals. We all want to make more money, and it's always going to be more and more every year. It's either I had buddies when I worked in Silicon Valley that they would give them twice the number and half the territory. It's because the product's ramping and it's starting to take off. The market forces are pushing, and generally, when you do assign a plan to someone, you're taking these things into consideration. A common misconception from a seller's point of view, a frontline seller, is if I got to kill all my pipeline out of my CRM because I don't want them to jack my quota way up next year.
Yeah,
and that's not the way a sales leader looks at it. They know who their A players, the B players, and C players are, and they assign quota accordingly. And it's also compensated in the same ways because, you know, some people are just really good and some people are mediocre. Some people are on their way up, and you get a few that are good. So it's a bit of science and a little bit of art, but there's a little bit more what would I say, analytics that goes into it than I think people really understand. And it doesn't really, while the CRM is great, I think we all understand the hygiene problems that we see in CRMs, even in forecasting, right, with accuracy and these things, and especially in small businesses, you can pretty much run most of your forecasting and even in big businesses done with a spreadsheet.
I remember being at JP Morgan and, you know, doing, you know, data security reviews, and you're like, so the whole company comes down to these 5 spreadsheets? like, wait a minute, I'm not sure everyone. Right?
Well, I went and worked for the actual the big at Microsoft, and they had a lot of spreadsheets that they would pull out and utilize and look at the numbers. But that's how you do it, right? It's something where you can pull it locally, you can look at it, you can massage things around and try to figure it out. But other piece, one of the other pieces too, though, that we didn't get into is we're talking a lot about just like setting quotas and stuff. But as a sales leader, in order to empower these people, like, you can't just hand someone a $1 million quota. They need to get 10 accounts and just say, hey, go knock it out. You have to have a plan with marketing in order to go out and produce the opportunities to help these people succeed. Because if you're just wanting a seller to go out and go kill, hunt, find everything, do it your own, you're going to put them in a pretty bad, rough position. And this is where it's going to be more and more interesting with the advent of AI marketing, and content in general. That's going to be more challenging for people to separate, you know, their message from others, and how do you connect? But these are things, is there's a lot of signal out there right now.
And because when I think about this, right, like, I'm imagining that if I had to hit a particular number, like $1 million, there's a whole series of steps of like, okay, out of every demo we do, half close into a deal. Okay, that means if I got to do $1 million, I got to do $2 million at the demo stage.
You got to do 20 demos. You got to do 20 demos.
20 demos. And then for every demo I booked, it took me 4 outreaches to get 1 demo booked. So that means I got to have 80 meetings, right? To have the 20 demos. And then to get the 80 meetings, I might need to have, you know, double the number of just email contacts. So like, it starts to, when you back into it, like, is that how sellers should be thinking about it?
It's how they do think, right? I mean, it's all working from a number back. You have the date, you start working back from it, right? I know end of the year is coming, and it's at the end of December for us, right? And you got to start planning your year backwards immediately. Also, with different chunks of time that are going to be cut out because of just the way the nature of business is. We used to call it rhythm of business at Microsoft. I call it the seller's calendar here, because there's different ebb and flow types of time that just coexist with life, right? Because we all take spring break, we all have holidays, there's summer vacation.
August is a nightmare for getting anything signed.
Thanksgiving, it used to be you would work 3 days during Thanksgiving week. Now it's almost completely taken off. You get into year end, and it's like, man, you get a day or two before Christmas holiday, and you can't connect with anyone. Not only that, but when you're in a bigger business like a major enterprise, they start shutting it down to where you can't place an order like after the first or second week, because they got to process everything out to close their books by the end of the year. So there's a lot of understanding when the year ends and then working that calendar backwards. But to your point, it seems like a lot when we say, wow, you got to do 200 outreaches. But then you start thinking, well, if there's 52 weeks in a year, I got to work 50 of them. And okay. And then let's take out another couple weeks for holidays and different things. All right. It's 48 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, you're really talking about, I got to do 5 or 10 emails a week just to outreach. And the good thing about modern technology and this AI stuff is there's some great automation out there to help sellers now just get the message out and do it in a way to where you can reach your targets with the right conversation points.
Which is obviously the mission that we're working to solve, right? To make it easier to so instead of spending the 8 hours or however many hours of prep, they can go and get those punchy messages out and increase the volume. Let me ask you this question: Is it different how different is it if they're a really early stage company versus obviously like I know this guy, he's a seller at Amazon, and I won't say his name because he loves his comfortable life, and he's like, dude, orders just come in. I don't do anything.
Well, and that's where you go from a educational sale to you're in an enterprise motion, and you're really not selling as much as you're just a facilitator of the transaction. And that's what you see in major enterprises, right? Is they're going in and presenting solutions, and then they're basically helping them consume a budget that's already been allocated. When you're a startup, you got to go out and actually either attach to a different budget, which is what most startups do now, is they put themselves in a vertical segment that has a budget line item associated with it. When you come in as a startup and you're brand new technology, which we see a lot of it with AI, but they're starting to plug them in the more traditional technology buckets, if you want to call them that, then you can kind of go in and extract what you think it is from the customer. But the key thing of now you're shifting your selling, though. You're going from a solution to an education, then a solution, then you got to close. So what does that mean? Traditionally, when we're selling, it's usually like anywhere, I try to say it's 7 to 5 meetings before you can actually close a deal. Like there's 7 to 5 different interactions you got to have with that customer. And that's when everything's locked in. If you got to do education, you need to be able to land that in 2 or 3 meetings before that. So you're actually extending that sales cycle, another 30 days to 45 days. So you just got to kind of keep at it. And that's
where the marketing alignments, having the right collateral out there, ads, dinners, those types of things help with that education prep foundation. So maybe you don't need the full 7 meetings, right? It can be
exactly. And most buyers are educating themselves way ahead of that first interaction with you. We go and try to prompt them to get them to start looking at that stuff. And then if your website, your marketing team, engineering, product, et cetera, is giving you the right tools to the website so people can self-educate, roughly 50 to 80% of the decision, you're just saving that much more time. And I always talk about deal compression time, like compressing the cycles down. So when I would come into a company, I would ask, what is the current, close rate? Like how many days does it take from start to finish in order to basically close the deal? And then you look at it and you just look at ways to compress it. Is it the message? Can we change something in the presentation earlier to educate them, take them in a different direction? And over time, as you work with your team, you're able to drive that down into what is the most compressed time frame. And usually whenever you're hitting stride as a business, I have another rule that I try to implement with anybody I invest in and the companies I work for. You have to be able to explain what the pricing is in less than a minute. Because if you can't get that messaging correct, there's so many other things that line up to make that message correct.
Yeah.
Then you're still further away. And so a lot of times when you're early cycle in a small startup, that's a little convoluted in how you position that. But over time, you're going to understand that it's going to get much more tight and rich, and it will land to the point. So everybody.
So I think that's probably a whole separate topic of like making sure you have your 1 minute elevator pitch, pricing.
Right. And this is really about pricing, because I've walked into some interesting pieces. Like when I worked for Foundry Networks in Silicon Valley, and they were acquired by Brocade. Well, they merged the two CRMs, and we were a networking security-ish company, but we had 25,000 SKUs or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And when we joined Brocade, they had like a few hundred maybe. And it was like, what the heck? So there's these things of where, wow, pricing is a big deal. How do you simplify it? How do you make it easier to buy?
So we've covered a lot. I think let's just do a quick. What's the two takeaways? If somebody's watching, listening, that they should be thinking about, as they're planning for the future for 2026 here.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent and of understanding your client base, man. I think without a doubt, you have to understand who's in the account, who your competition is, who the buyers are, and get to know them as much as you can before you ever speak to them. I think that's number one. The second thing is build your calendar. Figure out like how you're going to drive your pipe over each month. And then you'll just, once you have the top level pipeline, you know how you're going to execute on a sales play and what your success rate is going to be, an estimation. And always never do 100% whenever you're planning for your number. Go to like 140% or 150%.
You have to.
I always used to do it and align to my personal financial targets to understand what kind of number I had to hit. And then
that makes I think that makes a ton of sense. I think it's something very tactical. I think that people can use, right? Like I would kind of summarize it as do the math. Like, you got to hit 1 million, plan on 2 million in, to your point, 2.4 million in demos, which means you're going to have 40 meetings, or the 80 outreaches or 100 outreaches or whatever that is. But then when they do the math, like you said, model it to their sales year, right? What does this look like? How's that work? And if they do that, I think it lets them have the great conversations with their sales leader of here's where I'm at, here's what we're doing, transparency of I'm actually making the effort, we're demonstrating the work. By having the right information, by being a Delphris customer, they can do more, right? So they can bang those out. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. This was great. We definitely have some more things to talk about, but I thought this was a solid conversation, and thank you very much for chatting today.